Hello and welcome to the Nursing Career Transformation Roundtable. My name is Kate Loving-Shank of katelovingshank.com, author of the Prayer Prescription series and also the creator of the Kate Loving's Prayer Podcast, prayer prescriptions that rewire assumptions about your everyday reality. When you rewire your assumptions, your thoughts, and your beliefs, you rewire your brain. Okay. So today we have Pam Beatrice with us today, and she has written a wonderful book called Boldly Bald Women. Now, Pam is the author of Boldly Bald Women, and it's an Amazon international bestseller. And if you look on Amazon, you'll see that it's really doing well. She is both an ovarian cancer survivor and an autoimmune disorder that attacks body hair as foreign invaders and prevents regrowth. And that's called, her condition is called Alopecia universalis. Is that right, Pam?
That's correct.
Okay. She knows about being a bald woman in a hair-obsessed world. Pam wrote Boldly Bald Women for women who struggle with the emotional and societal impacts of hair loss. It is filled with stories and practical advice from bald women to spouses, family members, employers, co-workers, classmates, teachers, and doctors. Pam's new podcast, Boldly Bald Women, How to Survive and Thrive in a Hair-Obsessed World, will soon be available on iTunes. And this is how I met Pam. We both are involved in putting up our podcasts together, and I'm so happy to have met her. So if you're grappling with the emotional and social impacts of hair loss, whatever the cause, and frustrated with hot and itchy wigs, this is the place for you to be today. So please join me in welcoming Pam Beatrice. Thank you. Hello, Pam.
Hi, everybody. It's so
Yes.
good to see you all.
Thank you for being with us today, because your message can help so many amazing people who are now still struggling with shame and guilt. So, but obviously you have absolutely transcended that problem for yourself. So how did your journey, now this is going to be good because it's a short answer, how did your journey as a boldly bald woman begin?
I lost all my hair.
Exactly. Exactly.
Tell
us about that. Yeah.
I started out with ovarian cancer, and I was 75% of the women with ovarian cancer end up dead. Mm-hmm. I was one of the very fortunate women who I never had to have chemo or radiation, and I hence didn't lose my hair. And I quipped a little bit about that, saying, oh, well, I'm really lucky, but now how am I going to know what it's like to be Mrs. Clean? Be careful what you ask for. Be careful what you wish for. A couple years later, I had alopecia universalis, and that is an autoimmune disorder where my body thinks my hair is an invader, and it knocks out all the hair shafts. The hair follicles remain intact, but it's like bees buzzing around an intruder, and the white cells will not allow my hair to grow again. It's all there. It could grow, but they won't allow it to grow. Mm-hmm. You have to have a genetic component for alopecia areata, which is the term for it. There are various different levels of it, where you lose your eyebrows, or you lose just the top of your hair, or you have just little spots. But me, I've lost every body hair I ever owned, and the only ones I miss are my nose hairs. All of you out there, say a little prayer of thanks to God for your nose hairs, because I'll tell you, they do more for you than you can ever imagine.
I must say, I haven't thought about that before.
Those of you who are struggling through a difficult winter this year, you go out there, and those nose hairs are stiff from the cold, but they keep that hair in your nose just long enough so it doesn't hit your lungs with a really huge impact of cold. Mm-hmm. That's why your nose gets so cold, because your nose is keeping the air in there long enough so that it doesn't hurt your lungs. And in the summertime, those little gnats that you guys can flick out of your nose, They see my nostrils as a tunnel to the great beyond, and they end up as protein snacks on the back of my throat. And
Oh
believe
my gosh.
that's gross.
Oh my gosh.
Be grateful for your nose hair. Everything else I can do without.
Well, thank you for that insight.
More information than you wanted, but
No, not really. I think that's a very eye-opening. We take so much for granted, and that's something we may not have even considered, to be honest.
exactly.
So thank you for that. Now, what is International Alopecia Day? It's the first Saturday of August of each year. And what is it like in a place, or is it on the computer? And how can people access that?
It's really cool. Mary Marshall, who founded International Alopecia Day, is a dear friend who I met through writing the book Boldly Bald Women. She filled out one of the questionnaires that I had, and she and I got to the same place at the same time about how it's important for women to stop living in shame and to feel that they're not alone and that they can get out in the world with their bald heads, shine up their bald heads, and strut their stuff. Mm-hmm. So she started International Alopecia Day, which started out just as a very small little few people here and there on the computer, and they would all group into alopeciaworld.com, which is where a lot of the alopecian people hang out with internationally. And she said, come on, let's have a day where we just take our hair off. We just take off the wigs and we go out into the world. One day where we do that. So now it has gone from just a few people here and there to people literally all over the world who take that one day to take their hair off, their wigs off, and to make a statement to raise awareness for alopecia, mm-hmm. and to start making room for women, for bald women, as nothing out of the ordinary. And it's amazing. And every year she goes to, she takes all the photographs that she gets from all the people around the world, and she makes a video of them. Mm-hmm. And so that is available. Let's see, I think you can get it on YouTube, but alopeciaworld.com, and if you go to International Bald, what did I say? International
Alopecia Day?
Yeah, International Alopecia Day. You can find that on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And it's a fascinating thing where you see people from grown-ups, kids, men, women, all over, people who are saying it's okay for us to be bald.
Well, I would think that one day when people actually come out together and celebrate their baldness might make it a lot easier than to take the next step, which would be to go out into the world without all of that support and test the waters. Is that the way it works?
Exactly. There are many of the women now involved in International Alopecia Day that they have their own, they're just bald all the time, mm-hmm. but they together again to support the new people who have said, I never have taken my wig off in public before. Mm-hmm. I kind of liked it. It felt really good. And it does feel good.
Yeah, the hair-obsessed culture that we live in where did that come from? How did this hair obsession, did it begin in Hollywood, the entertainment business? Did it begin with people thinking that if you're sick because of cancer or because of whatever, there's a stigma attached to being bald for women, but not for men? Tell us a little bit about that.
It started many, 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 many long years and eons ago. Women were considered chattel in ancient times. They were breeding stock. They would look at women and take a gauge. Would they be able to bear children? Were they beautiful? Were they this? Were they that? Hair is a visual language in and of itself. It lets you know at a glance if someone is healthy, In some cultures, it will let you know if they're married, such as in the Jewish culture, women who are married never show their hair once they're married to anyone except for their husbands. And so they either wear turbans or wigs all the time. But way back in the time of Aristotle, it was women were just, they were subhuman. They literally were subhuman because they did not produce sperm. And at that time they believed that the human soul came from the sperm. And the women were nothing more than fields to grow the matter. So you wanted to make sure that you had the best petri dish to grow children in that you could. And hair was one of the ways that they could do that. Because women had no rights, they couldn't even cut their hair without their husband's permission. And that lasted for a very long time. It went into, as women became more independent, in Europe, they started trying to cut their hair on their own. My publisher told me one story that was really, really cool about an ancestor of hers who was the first woman to graduate from a college and in their community. And she was so excited. She graduated with honors. She had all these honors. And the day before the graduation ceremony, she cut her hair in what was then a very new, very stylish bob. And the president of the university came to her and said, "I don't think I can graduate you." And she said, "Why not?" And he said, "Well, because you showed such poor judgment in cutting your hair that I don't think you have the intellectual qualifications to be a graduate of the university." To which she stood up to her full short height that she had, and she said, "It's not about the hair that makes my brains work. It's my brains that give me what I have, not my hair." And he did graduate her, but boy, was that ever a big deal.
That's not strange.
You know, so you're talking about just cutting your hair. You go to World War II, and the prisoners of war, their heads were shaved. It was for lice. Yes, were there lice? Yes, there were. It was also dehumanizing, defeminizing, however one would say that word. And the women after World War II, the prostitutes who had saved their children from starving by sleeping with either the French or the Germans or whoever, it didn't matter, their heads were shaved and they were paraded through the town. Garbage was thrown at them. They were tarred and feathered. And the sign of shame was your hair loss. So we have that ingrained in us as women, that hair is our crowning glory.
Right.
That's biblical. It's in all different cultures. In some cultures, women's hair was so enticing and so sexually stimulating that they had to cover it for religious reasons, because the men were so stimulated by it that they had to be protected. Of course, now that shows what men are doing as far as being responsible for their own feelings and their own actions.
Right.
But we were told that it was because our hair was so beautiful that we had to protect the men and we had to protect ourselves. So now when somebody goes out and they lose their hair, I have spoken with cancer people who have cancer victims who have been more concerned about losing their hair from chemotherapy than they were about the cancer they had.
Oh, for heaven's sakes, right.
They would rather die than lose their hair. That's a pretty deeply ingrained core identity. So you shave a woman's head or her hair falls out, first thing she does, she looks in the mirror and she sees a total stranger. There's a landscape that we've been looking at for years and years and years and years. We know what we look like before we look in the mirror. You look in the mirror after you lose your hair, and what do you see? You see a complete alien. Look at me. I have no eyebrows. I have no eyelashes. Of course, I have no mustache, and I have no middle-aged chin hairs either, which I consider a real bonus. But if you're seeing a whole foreign landscape in the mirror, it's a shock. Well, then what happens to other people? It's a shock to them as well. What happens to your husband? Here he's had this wife who's had hair. All of a sudden she doesn't. She's she's a foreign entity now. They've dealt with this in a couple of TV programs about the balding women. Can't remember right now what it was, which episode it was, but they have begun to deal with it. Is it from Hollywood? You bet it's from Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
Look at all the women now. You see women in the news. You see women in movies. They all have no, not all. I can't say that. 99.9% of them have long hair.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the ones who are in entertainment, they have all of these little extension things to make their hair look fuller. Why is that? Because hair is sexy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the women who don't have hair, what are they?
Yeah.
How do they feel about themselves?
Right. You know, as I was reading your book, I remembered an incident that happened to me in the 3rd grade. And my 3rd grade teacher had a psychotic episode where one by one she brought the girls up to the front of the class and cut off all their hair. So I stood towards the back because I knew that there would be a lunch break and I'd be able to leave and contact somebody to help us, because I didn't want to have my hair cut off at the time or ever, unless I cut it off myself. Of course, obviously I can get it cut off myself. It's my choice.
Great style.
So anyway, at lunchtime, I went home and I told my mom, and she called the principal. And when we came back to class in the afternoon, the authorities came and took her to a mental institution. But she was cutting off everybody's hair and talking about how God is, we're all shamed. She was talking about God as a shameful kind of overlord. It was really completely weird. So that it came to me as I was reading your book, and wow, what can I say? So let's talk a little bit about the wigs that you before the program began today. You showed me a wig. So tell us about your experience with wigs. And there's a huge topic of conversation about wigs that goes through the book as well.
Well, when I lost my hair, we had just lost my brother from a heart attack, and my sister couldn't stand to see me with no hair. So I started out wearing wigs. My boss at work didn't want me to be without hair. He was very offended by that. And so I got the wig and I put it on, just like this. There you go. Be with hair. And I'll tell you what, it's hot.
Yes.
Itchy. My boss would come up behind me and I'd look up and all of a sudden my wig would go up and I'd have the 60s poof and I'd be pushing it down like that, get it back on my head. Real professional, right? Or somebody would come to me and they would give me a hug and my hair would catch on their glasses and it would go whoosh. Now, do they have things for that? Yes, they do. They have little net things that you can wear underneath. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line is that underneath these wigs,
yeah,
there are strands of harsh. It looks like lace, but it doesn't feel like lace. And then in between, there's little ropes that go back and forth, and they are abrasive. And you add that to the wig, and even if you put a net or something underneath it, you've got one more layer. My head would get so hot. I mean, you can even see just that little bit right there. You can, I don't know if you can hear the stickiness from that just that little time on the wig. My head would get so hot, and I put makeup on to try and cover up the loss from the eyebrows and the eyelashes, and to try and make me look a little more professional with this wig. The sweat would drip down my head. There was no eyebrows to catch it. It would drip into my eyes. There were no eyelashes to keep it out of my eyes. I would get mascara in my eyes, which would then blink around, muddy up, and dribble down my cheeks like the Mississippi River going to the Delta on my chin. And I would got mud all down my face from this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was constantly trying to constantly going into the bathroom to take it off and cool my head. I wound up getting yeast infections. And the yeast infections were horrible. And
Painful, itchy, right?
painful, itchy, and just gross. I thought, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to live like this? So I asked my boss, I said, this is really uncomfortable. And would you mind if I wore hats? And he just stood there and didn't say anything. And so I thought, oh, okay, I gave you your chance. And I went to the head of the company, and I said, this is what's going on for me. Well, he was obligated to say, legally, you can do whatever you want. But the thing that my boss had told me was, now not only are you bald, now not only are you fat, but you're bald, and you do not reflect the ambience that I want my office to project. And so they were legally obligated to do something because he'd called me fat, not because of the baldness. There is no protection for women who are bald. There's no legal protection. You go to work, your boss doesn't like you, he doesn't have to tell you why, but he can get rid of you if he wants to. And there are several people in the book who shared that they had similar experiences in their jobs.
Right, I read them. Wow.
So this is a big deal too. But they're hot. They itch. They're miserable. I worked in a retirement home, and I'm a very huggy, outgoing person, and I love my little residents. I love them so much. And I was always going up to them and giving them hugs and kisses on the cheeks, even though technically you're not supposed to do that. I did it anyway, and they loved it. And as I was wearing this wig, they were looking at me, and they were saying, Pam, are you all right? Are you okay, Pam? No, I am not okay, I said one day. And they said, well, what's the matter? This little old lady was bent over, and she had this walker, and she said, what's the matter with you? You're not giving us our hugs, and you're not giving us our kisses, and what's the matter with you? And so I said, I've got alopecia universalis. I don't have any hair, and I'm wearing a stupid wig, and it's hot, and it's itchy, and I'm miserable, and I hate it. And she came up to me with her little walker, said to me in a whisper, not realizing that she was almost totally deaf. She could hear with her hearing aids, but she couldn't control her own response. So she intended to whisper, but she said very loudly, so all the rest of the residents in the coffee shop heard her, so take the damn thing off.
How cute.
And I thought about that, and I thought, these were the people I was concerned about offending.
Mm-hmm.
Here they are in the end stage of their life.
Yes.
A place where they know that they will die.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am with no hair, and that could possibly cause them some consternation, like thinking I was a cancer victim or. And instead of those people wanting the fake wig, they wanted real hugs.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted, so I took the thing off. That was it. That was the last time I ever wore it. I wore hats for a while, but they were miserable too.
Yes.
Even though there's air holes in them. So finally I just said, no, nuts, I'm taking it off, and I did.
Yes. Wow, that's a great, interesting to think that the people in the nursing homes were the ones who gave you that insight, and that was how you had your aha experience and getting rid of those wigs and hats.
They gave me the insight, they gave me the permission, and they gave me the encouragement afterwards. I think that so many times people discount the wisdom in the elderly people around us.
Well, of course. That's another problem in our society.
They have lived so much life, and at that point, they really don't want the fake things.
Mm-hmm.
They want somebody who really, truly loves them for who they are, and wrap them up in a big bear hug and tell them they're loved.
That's right. That's right.
About the wigs. They don't, and they didn't, and it was so freeing.
I love that. Oh, it did? It did?
It did. I lost my job as a result of it. They had to, because of the fat thing, they had to put me in a different place for a while, but I had no training in it, and it was a small company, and it was the only place they could put me. So my husband said, go home. That's it. He said, we're not doing this. And that's when I started writing Boldly Bald Women. But what a favor he did me.
Oh yeah. Oh,
He was
it is.
so
You're
jerk,
right.
but what a favor he did me. I am
Totally.
happy. I'm so happy with what I'm doing.
Okay, Pam.
Yes.
What advice can you give to nurses and doctors who are in a helping position for their patients with alopecia?
First, I would say recognize that you're not talking about hair. You're not talking about a spot. You're talking about a blemish on a woman's self-concept of her femininity and her sexuality. Do not discount it.
Mm-hmm.
Let her know that you understand. Let her know that her feelings are genuine and it's okay that she's feeling that way. Give her something to hang on to. Here's a place I can send you. Send her to Alopecia World. Send her to boldlybaldwomen.com. Give her something. Tell her about Boldly Bald Women, and not because it's a book that I wrote, because this is a story of 25 different women who were willing to share their stories with me to help their sisters coming along, to short circuit some of the pain that we have all gone through as we first begin to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
Let them know that you see that this is a very real issue for them. And it's not just about the women with alopecia, the women with cancer. They're dealing with life-threatening issues. I know I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are more concerned about losing their hair than they are about dealing with their cancer. Does that tell you how deeply ingrained hair is to our femininity? And this has only been exacerbated by Respect the Scalp. There's a whole industry out there that makes billions and billions of dollars on the concept that women and their hair are the sexy focal points of a woman.
Mm-hmm.
That it's their hair that's the focal point of their femininity and their value. So let them know you understand. And if they say, well, you can't possibly understand, you know, we've all lost something. May not be hair, but we've all had to deal with some sort of loss, and there is grief involved in your hair loss. Allow yourself to grieve. You don't have to be ashamed of your hair loss. You've done nothing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Let yourself grieve. Let yourself get through this. Talk to people who can help. Don't think you're alone, and don't try and go through this alone.
Right.
And that's advice to you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it sounds like that there's a huge suicide ideation that goes with this loss, and that we don't know what the statistics are of who is actually committing suicide. But I mean, that we're talking about lots of depression that surrounds this issue, and the doctors need to address that too. The doctors and nurses, nurse practitioners, nurse midwives, etc.
Exactly. There is a tremendous amount of depression that goes along with it. And especially, I think, some of the younger women in their, from puberty into their mid-20s, where most people are getting boyfriends or looking for mates. A lot of women think that they no longer are valuable as a mate and that nobody wants them.
Mm-hmm.
And that depression and some of the bullying that has gone along with it in childhood, that impacts depression as well.
Yes, the bullying, that's very huge, isn't it, with alopecia patients and
It really
clients?
is. Some of the stories in the book about the women who have been bullied they're heart-wrenching. They're just heart-wrenching. I wanted to reach out and just hold them and say, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I experienced that with my granddaughter. I took her to kindergarten last year for the first time, and she was 6. And one day it was my turn to take her, and a bunch of kids were looking at me, and they were doing that, looking at me, and one little boy said, "Hey, lady, do you know you're bald?" No, I am? Who took my hair? Did you take my hair? put his hands in his pocket. He said, "No, lady, I didn't take your hair." Put his head down and kind of strode away. I thought it was hilarious, but I looked down at my granddaughter, and she was embarrassed and uncomfortable and a little angry that someone would be talking mean to her yaya, that she interpreted that way to her grandma. And so I dropped her off in her class, and I went to the office. And I said, we need an assembly about loss of hair and bullying. And we an assembly, and I ended up talking to the entire elementary school in 2 separate groups. And in each one of them, I had my granddaughter stand up and say, "Jordan, why does Yaya not have any hair?" "Because my Yaya has alopecia." And they all giggle, 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 Twitter, 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 alopecia. And I said, "That's right, and that's how you're going to remember it." So we said, alopecia, alopecia. And we talked about what it feels like not to have any hair and to have people stare and to say things that are not very nice, and how it made Jordan feel when people were being mean to her yaya. She loves her yaya. And then I said, "Do any of you have people at home? Do any of you have moms or sisters or friends at home who have lost their hair?" One hand went up, and another hand went up, and then more and more and more and more hands went up. And the kids were all starting to share. "Well, my mom has cancer. Well, my mom has spots on her head." I didn't know what they were, but maybe they're alopecia too. And after that, the kids came up to me the other days when I would bring Jordan to her class. They come up to me and say, "We know who you are. You're Jordan, yeah, and you have alopecia." And then the coolest part about it was that the next year when I brought Jordan one day to her 1st grade class, a whole bunch of those kids came up. And they said, "Hi, Jordan's yaya. You have alopecia, and I remember you." And I said, "And I remember you too, because you were in the assembly." They were standing around showing me the teeth that had come out during the summer. They didn't care less about my hair anymore. Because they'd gone beyond that superficial to the person that I am.
Right.
And that's what I want for the women who are losing their hair. I want them to be able to make a choice. You want to go out bald? You don't? But don't have it be shame-based. Have it be because it's your choice for yourself, not about
Yeah, absolutely. That's why the whole thing with the wigs is so important for women to, if that's what they want, then that's what they should do. But I think that your point of having that heat and of the sweat and all of the very uncomfortable, and that the reason you're wearing a wig is because the men and the male employers didn't want you to go bald. And actually, women these days also won't cut their hair without their without their husband's permission. And there's still a lot of things rooted in how a man perceives what a woman should or shouldn't be doing, especially when it comes to her hair. So
Exactly.
that's not the end of that. That's for sure.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And you would think that it would be, but I think it was 2000, maybe 9, there was a man who thought his daughter had stolen something from Walmart. Turns out she didn't, but he thought she did. And she had taken the Game Boy from his room and played with it without his permission. He shaved off her hair.
So
As a matter of shaming her and punishing her for what she. This is 2009.
yes.
He was arrested, but he was arrested because they said that he had spanked the girl, so he was arrested for assault. Nobody said anything about the fact that he cut her hair off.
Yeah, I think this is a wonderful consciousness raising experience, because the whole thing with hair and how it is rooted in vanity, and how it is rooted in how you think others, you're afraid of what others think of you, and all of these things really are not important, because when you finally go out without your wigs and you go out being a boldly bald woman, everything changes, and it has given you and everybody in the book not only an opportunity for service, but it has also created meaning in your life.
Exactly. Exactly. I love it. I love it. Now, I use my baldness as an opportunity to teach people when they ask what happened, or even to just receive people's attention as one human being to another human being saying, I see that there's a problem. I care about that you have a problem. And sometimes they just touch me and say, I'll say a prayer for you. And I say,
Mhm.
thank you. Sometimes I don't tell them that it's alopecia. I don't say that because they think that I'm a cancer victim, and I figure, well, I qualified.
Yeah.
I was. I'm not anymore, but I qualified. And so it's just I choose to see it as caring. Thank you so much for caring about me. And and there is such a sense of freedom. I have such a sense of freedom. My
Oh,
sense
that's
of
great.
come back. It's like, yes, I don't
Mhm.
have to be anybody I'm not anymore. I'm just who I am. Take it or leave it.
how how can being boldly bald change our definitions of beauty in American society?
Well, what's happening is that Miss Delaware, maybe she was 2010, Miss Delaware,
Mm.
has competed in, she has alopecia universalis like I do.
Hmm.
And she ended up winning Miss Delaware, uh, even bald. There are more and more and more women now who are coming out and saying, I'm bald, who are being models. Little Olivia,
Yes.
who was a little girl who, at 8 years old, decided that she did not want to wear her wig anymore, even though her mother had gotten her a $6,000 human hair wig with a vacuum thing that they glued to her head every morning. I can't imagine that.
Oh, that's toxic. Why couldn't they have seen that? That's sad.
But they were trying to protect her.
Yes.
They were trying to protect her from bullying. They were trying to protect her from the shame that gets projected on. They were trying to protect her.
Yes, and she kind of knew that it was pointless,
She just
which
didn't
is
like
great.
it. She
Yeah.
said, this is dumb. This is miserable. I hate doing this.
Hmm.
And so she has now become, she's a real role model for young women. She's now, I think almost 18.
Hmm.
And she's won the Jefferson Award. She goes all around the country. And she's been to other countries speaking about bullying and speaking about baldness. She's done a video. Um, she's written a book. I'm just your ordinary boldly bald. I'm just your ordinary teenager, but I'm bald. I can't remember the exact name of that, but Olivia Rusk is her name. You can find her online as well, and she's a real role model. There are more and more women who are coming out to be role models for other women.
Hmm.
It's like there's this whole jungle of junk about hair, and some of us are just taking a machete and cutting a path for the rest of us, and encouraging our sisters to come along and say, make your choice. You don't have to be shamed. You don't have to allow other people to shame you. If there's a man who says you're ugly bald, you don't want him. But what I'm finding is that most men really find it very attractive. Not
Right.
everybody, but there are, I mean, we bald women have to
Hmm.
be a little bit careful what we do and what we say online, because there are some fetishes out there,
Ah.
people with bald fetishes.
Hmm.
That brings back the shame again, because that's about power. It's
Yes.
nothing to do with beauty, and it's pretty sleazy. But the most part of us, we're walking out there, and our sole purpose is to make room for bald women to make a choice, and for them to say, I am not my hair. My hair does not define who I am. I can choose what I want to do. I can choose who I want to be. And so it truly is a feminist issue,
It is.
and an actualization issue.
Kind of like Maslow's law of actualization, his ladder of actualization. Like you find out you're bald, and then you take these steps to find meaning and opportunity, which is self-actualization.
Exactly. Exactly. I think one of the frustrating things about alopecia anyway is that it's so fickle.
Mhm.
You can have a spot that goes and then it'll grow back and it'll be back for years. Or you can go to a dermatologist and get shots and then it'll grow back and then 3 inches away another one will fall out.
Mhm.
And sometimes you lose all your hair and then it grows back again. And sometimes part of it will grow back. There was one time I grew back a little bit on the back of my head and my husband looked at me and he said, "Honey." I said, "Yes, little Greek, what is it?" He said, "Would you please shave that off? It looks like a monkey's butt."
There's lot of a lot of humor about this whole thing. I think that's great too.
I love it. I just love it. It is funny. And if you can step aside and not take yourself so seriously, whatever life throws at you,
Yes.
don't take yourself so seriously. You find that people are not nearly as unkind as you would think they were. There are a lot of people out there that have been extremely supportive of me and what I'm doing. And I'm 64 years old. I'm arthritic. I have bad knees. I'm morbidly obese. And I have had more men tell me I'm beautiful now than I ever did when I was thin and had hair and really wasn't too bad looking. Now they're all telling me, "Oh, you're so beautiful. You're so beautiful." I'm thinking, my husband says, "What? Have you been to your eye doctor recently? Do you
Oh.
But it's fun." And I've had men come up to me and say, "Where did you get such a smooth shave?" I said, "Well, I got the best barber." "Well, who's that?" "God."
So Pam, how can people get a hold of you, your website, if they want to get some counseling as to how they can deal with the situations they have to deal with concerning baldness? How can they reach you?
My website is boldlybaldwomen.com,
Mm-hmm.
and the book is Boldly Bald Women, and you can get that on Amazon. And it comes either in the softcover or Kindle version, and it's available internationally. So just get to your local Amazon, and you can get it. You can get it from there. And soon I will be doing the weekly podcasts and be interviewing experts in the areas of shame and getting past personal issues, grieving, how to get beyond all of this. That will be the main direction of it. As far as counseling goes, I'm looking at that. I'm beginning to feel that there is a big need for that. And now that I know we can do these hangouts one-on-one, it's not going to be a difficult thing to mentor women for helping them get beyond their issues. And so I'm thinking about having either or maybe both, a small group of women um, who are wanting counseling or one-on-one. And that will be something that will be paid because I have to do something to make back a little bit of all this investment.
Right.
But I think that it would be an investment for them that would be very, very, very worthwhile.
You could have a membership site,
Yes.
and then you could have a webinar series where you have the experts come on, and people can actually see it for free. But if they want to download them all, they can pay a sum of money. That helps.
I want to make it accessible for everybody.
Yes.
I do not want it to be an exclusive thing, but for those women who either need or want closer counseling, or for those women who work with women who are bald, whether it's in chemotherapy, who want some ideas on what they can do. That's another area that I can help in. But this has been such a trip. It's such a wonderful, wonderful. I'm so grateful to be bald. Kate,
Yes.
I am so grateful I'm bald. It's just it's just a wonderful thing to be able to reach out and touch women and say, no, let the shame go.
Yes.
You are.
Now, that's the main point right there. Shame, guilt, and
Fear.
hopelessness and depression are all very, very difficult vibrations to live with.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, I totally wish you well, and we can have you on again to discuss how you are progressing. And
Oh,
it's been a real pleasure to talk with you. I've certainly haven't gotten this close to you until today, so this is great. I actually went to the hairdresser before I came onto the Google Hangout and got my hair almost shaved.
well, it's a little long, Kate, but it's okay.
Yeah. Well, I can feel the cold air going through my scalp. I like that feeling.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Yes, yes. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I'm so delighted that you wanted me to come on your podcast, and I appreciate this opportunity, and I wish you well.
Oh, thank you, Pam. I wish you well. And namaste.
Epices, as the Greeks would say.
Oh, good. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.